The day my son and his wife thought they had become millionaires, they looked me straight in the eye and told me to get out of their house. "We don't need your pitiful pension money anymore. Just go disappear somewhere," they sneered. They didn't realize I was laughing inside because the ticket they were celebrating wasn't even theirs. If you're listening, let me take you back to how justice finally found its way to me. 3 weeks earlier, on a freezing December morning in Willow Creek, Illinois, I was following a ritual I'd kept for over 30 years. Every Friday, I walked down to Sam's corner store and bought a lottery ticket with the same numbers I played since 1991. My name is Evelyn Carter, 67 years old, widowed for 2 years, and still living under the same roof as my son's wife likes to remind me in their guest room. A guest room that somehow required me to hand over every dollar of my Social Security check as rent. "Morning, Mrs. Carter," called out Sam Jenkins, the store owner. He'd known me since my son was a little boy, tugging at my coat, begging for penny candy. At only 25, Sam still remembered those days. "The usual?" he asked. "Of course," I said, handing him my $5. He printed my ticket while I silently recited the numbers that held my life story. 7 for the day I married Henry, 14 for the day my son Daniel was born, 23 for our wedding anniversary, 31 for the house number where we built our lives, 45 for the years Henry and I spent together, and 18 for the age Daniel was when he graduated high school, so full of promise. Those numbers weren't just digits to me. They were my memories carved into ink. "Cross your fingers for me, Sam," I told him as I slipped the ticket into my purse. He chuckled. "Always do, Mrs. Carter. You're overdue for some good luck." Little did either of us know how right. He was walking back through the biting December wind. I passed the house Henry and I had shared for over 40 years. The new owners had painted it a loud shade of blue. Henry would have hated that. He always said our white house with green shutters looked dignified, a place where family values lived. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had raised my son in that house, and now that same son treated me as though I were nothing more than an unwanted burden. When I arrived at Daniel and Vanessa's Grand Colonial house, 3-car garage, sparkling, new kitchen, and debt stretching far beyond their paychecks, Vanessa's luxury SUV sat proudly in the driveway. Through the kitchen window, I could see her talking on the phone, no doubt planning her next vacation or complaining about how I was still living there. I slipped through the back door and hung my coat on the same kind of hook Henry used to hang. His work shirt's on, a symbol of belonging that no longer felt mine. "Evelyn, is that you?" Vanessa's sharp voice cut through the air. "Yes, just me," I replied softly, resisting the urge to say, "Sorry for existing in your precious house." I had learned that sometimes survival means swallowing your words and holding on to whatever dignity you can. Henry's death had changed everything. On the day of his funeral, Daniel had insisted I couldn't stay alone in the family house. "It's not practical, Mom," he said, his wife chiming in with concerns about snow, shoveling, lawn care, and the danger of falling. Their words had sounded compassionate, but looking back, they were simply rehearsed excuses. They convinced me to move into their so-called guest room. At first, I thought it was kindness. I quickly learned it was a business arrangement in disguise, Henry's. Funeral was held on a cold Tuesday in December, the kind of day when even the sun seemed unwilling to shine. 45 years of marriage had been reduced to a 90-minute service and store-bought sandwiches at the church hall. My son Daniel gave a touching speech about his father being a hard worker and a family man. His wife Vanessa dabbed her eyes at just the right moments, though I'd never once seen her cry over anything that wasn't tied to a shopping receipt. On the drive back, Daniel turned to me and said, "Mom, you can't stay in that big old house alone." It's not safe or practical. I stared out at the frozen farmland, remembering how Henry used to hold my hand along this very road when we were young, talking about our dreams. Practical had never been part of those dreams. I've managed just fine for 65 years. I told him, but Vanessa leaned forward from the front seat. Evelyn, at your age, things like lawn care, snow removal, even groceries, they become dangerous. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one's there? Her concern almost sounded genuine, almost. And then Daniel added, we have plenty of space. The guest room hardly gets used. You'd be with family. You could even help with the kids when they visit. That should have been my first warning sign. Help with the kids. Their house was a Grand Colonial in the newer part of Willow Creek. Shiny hardwood floors, granite countertops, and a kitchen island larger than the first apartment Henry and I ever rented. They'd bought it 5 years ago, stretching themselves thin, but they wore their debt like a badge of success. Vanessa showed me the guest room as though it were a luxury suite at a hotel. Pale walls, new bedding, a window overlooking their manicured yard. It'll be like your own little retreat, she said sweetly, fluffing the pillows. For the first month, things seemed tolerable. I cooked dinners, tidied up, and tried to stay out of their way. Daniel seemed grateful, Vanessa. Polite enough. But by the second month, the requests started rolling in. Evelyn, can you watch the kids this weekend? Daniel and I need couple time. Evelyn, since you're going to the store, could you grab our dry cleaning too? Evelyn, the cable guy's coming today. Can you handle it? We're busy. Each favor came dressed as necessity, but little by little, I stopped feeling like a guest and started feeling like unpaid staff. Still, I told myself it was temporary, just until the grief softened, just until I found my footing again. But by summer, the mask slipped completely. One morning, Vanessa laid out papers on the kitchen table as though she were negotiating. A business deal. We need to discuss your financial arrangement, she said. My stomach sank before she even explained. She had itemized lists of rent, utilities, food, all highlighted neatly. My share came to $1,300 a month, just $50 less than my Social Security check. This seems high, I managed. I'm only one person. I'm gone several hours a day at the senior center. You still use the kitchen, the laundry, the bathroom, Vanessa replied smoothly. And when the kids come over, you're here full time, which increases costs. Daniel sat silent beside her, nodding weakly. He didn't defend me. He didn't even flinch. In that moment, I realized something had shifted. I wasn't family anymore. I was income. I signed her so-called agreement because what choice did I have? No landlord in town would rent to a 67-year-old widow with nothing but a pension, so I swallowed my pride and signed. Daniel even smiled at me afterward, saying, "It's just temporary, Mom, until we figure out a long-term plan." But I already knew the truth. The long-term plan was simple. Bleed me dry while keeping me under their roof. By autumn, any illusion of kindness was gone. I was no longer treated as a guest in my son's house. I had become their full-time housekeeper, cook, and babysitter, all while paying them rent that drained my entire check. When Daniel's children from his first marriage, Liam and Sophie, visited every other weekend, I cherished every moment. With them, their laughter filled the rooms, reminding me of better times. But for Daniel and Vanessa, the kids were just another responsibility to escape from. Evelyn, you'll handle the kids tonight, right? We have dinner plans. Or we're heading out of town for the weekend. You'll manage them, won't you? They said it so casually, as if I were hired help. Then came the night that changed everything inside me. Vanessa hosted one of her polished dinner parties. The kind where her friends gathered around the mahogany table, sipping expensive wine and gossiping about their lives. I had spent the entire day cleaning, preparing trays of appetizers, and serving drinks with a smile I forced onto my face dot as I carried a tray of empty glasses back to the kitchen. I overheard Vanessa laughing with her friend. It's actually worked out perfectly, she bragged. Evelyn handles all the housework, watches the kids, and her check basically covers most of the bills. It's like having live-in staff, except she pays us for the privilege. Her friend laughed so loudly it made my hands tremble. That's brilliant. You should write a book, How to Profit from Your Mother-in-Law. I stood there, frozen in the hallway, clutching that tray. My life, my grief, my presence in their home had been reduced to a clever business scheme. The woman I had raised my son to cherish was treating me like a punchline. And Daniel, my own son, wasn't defending me. He wasn't even in the room. That night, as I loaded dishes into the dishwasher alone, something inside me hardened. I didn't say a word, not them. I just went upstairs to the small room they called mine and sat in the dark. But I knew the truth now. This wasn't a family helping one another through hard times. This was exploitation, pure and simple. And though I didn't realize it yet, the universe was about to hand me the perfect weapon. Winter came early that year. Snow piled high against the sidewalks, turning every step into a slippery gamble. But that Friday, I walked to Sam's corner store with more determination than usual. I had been buying the same lottery ticket for 32 years, numbers tied to my life with Henry, and though I never truly expected to win, I never skipped a week. Sam smiled as I shook the snow from my boots. Rough weather for walking, Mrs. Carter. I've walked through worse, I replied, sliding $5 across the counter. Same numbers as always. He printed my ticket and I tucked it into my purse, right behind Henry's old driver's license, the one I still carried because I couldn't bear to throw it away. Cross your fingers for me, Sam. Always do, he said warmly. Maybe this is your week. Walking home, I passed a group of kids sledding down the hill near Willow Creek Elementary. Their laughter rang through the frozen air, innocent and untainted by greed. It reminded me of Daniel at that age, his cheeks flushed pink from the cold, his little hands red from snowball fights, his joy so simple and pure. Where had that boy gone? When had he become a man who could look at his own mother and see only an inconvenience? When I reached the house, Vanessa was on the phone with a contractor. I stopped in the hallway when I heard her words. Yes, cheapest options only. It doesn't have to be fancy. It's just for one elderly person, just for one elderly person. That's what I had become, not Evelyn Carter, who had raised children, buried a husband, and carried decades of memories, but simply one elderly person to be managed cheaply. That night, alone in my upstairs room, I sat by the window watching the snow fall. My lottery ticket rested in my purse like a secret waiting to be revealed. I whispered a silent prayer, not for riches, but for freedom. At 10:59 p.m., the numbers flashed across the television screen. 7, 14, 23, 31, 45. Powerball 18. My numbers. Every single one. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. My hand shook as I pulled the ticket from my wallet, holding it beside the glowing numbers on the screen. It was real. 32 years of hope had finally struck, and I wasn't holding a dream anymore. I was holding $53 million. My first instinct was to run downstairs, to shout, to share the miracle with Daniel and Vanessa. But then I remembered where I was, living as their tenant, their unpaid housekeeper, their so-called burden. And I realized something important. This wasn't their win. It was mine. So I slid the ticket back into my purse, turned off the television, and lay awake in the dark until morning. By the time the sun rose over Willow Creek, I had the beginnings of a plan. Saturday morning in the Carter household looked just like any other. Daniel was shut away in his office, pretending to catch up on work before his golf game. Liam and Sophie were still in their pajamas, arguing about cartoons. Vanessa, dressed in yoga clothes, breezed through the kitchen announcing, "Evelyn, I'm heading to class, then the salon. You'll handle breakfast and the kids, right?" "Of course," I answered, like always. I was in the living room mediating. The children's quarrel when I heard the shuffle of papers in the kitchen. Vanessa had decided to tidy up and was rifling through my purse in search of the grocery coupons I clipped earlier in the week. "Evelyn, where did you put those cereal coupons?" She called. "They should be in the side pocket," I replied. Absently, a moment later, her voice changed. "Oh my God. What is this?" I turned to see her standing by the counter, pale as a sheet, clutching the lottery ticket between her manicured fingers. "You bought a ticket?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I buy one every week," I said calmly. "Same numbers for 32 years. Her eyes widened, panic overtaking her face. She fumbled for her phone and began typing frantically. Then she screamed, "Daniel, get in here, now." My son appeared, golf shirt half buttoned, hair still uncombed. "What's going on?" "The ticket." Vanessa shoved it into his hands. "Look at the numbers. Look at last night's drawing." Daniel's eyes scanned the slip, then flicked to Vanessa's glowing phone screen. His face went slack. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the children grew silent, sensing something monumental had happened. Finally, Vanessa broke the silence. "We won. Daniel, we won $53 million. She grabbed Sophie and spun her around the kitchen, laughing and crying. Daniel just stood frozen, staring at the ticket like it might vanish if he blinked, and me. I stayed seated at the table, watching the chaos as though it were a play staged for my amusement. They didn't see me. Not really. They saw the money dot Daniel. Finally turned toward me, his voice tight. "Mom, do you realize what this means?" I folded my hands on the table, my face calm. "I know exactly what it means." They rushed into planning mode immediately. Vanessa paced the floor, talking. "A mile a minute. We should upgrade the basement renovations." "No, forget the basement. With this kind of money, we can buy a bigger house. Maybe even look into one of those luxury senior communities for you, Evelyn, the kind with activities and nurses. You'd be more comfortable there," Daniel nodded eagerly. "That's actually a good idea, Mom. You'd probably be happier with people your own age. And with this much money, we can afford the best." I let them chatter for a moment, building castles in the air with my fortune. Then I cleared my throat. "There's just one small detail you both seem to be forgetting," I said softly. They stopped. Vanessa frowned. "What detail?" I extended my hand. After a long pause, Daniel reluctantly placed the ticket back into my palm. "The ticket is in my name," I said evenly. "I bought it with my money, using the same numbers I've played faithfully for over 3 decades. That makes it mine." The silence that followed was like ice shattering. Vanessa's face turned crimson, her lips twitching as though searching for words. Daniel looked stunned, caught between disbelief and denial. "No," Vanessa whispered. "No, Evelyn, you can't mean that." "We're family. Family shares. This changes everything for all of us." I stood, clutching the ticket tightly. For the first time in years, I felt taller than both of them. "You're right," I said. "This does change everything. But not for us, for me." The kitchen fell silent after my words. Even the hum of the refrigerator sounded louder than their breathing. Daniel rubbed his forehead, his voice trembling. With forced calm, "Mom, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Yes, the ticket is in your name, technically, but we're family. We support each other. We share." "Share?" I almost laughed. "Like how I shared my entire Social Security check every month to pay you rent?" Like how I shared my time raising your children, cleaning your house, cooking your meals, while you both lived as though I didn't exist. Vanessa's expression shifted quickly, her business smile snapping into place like armor. Evelyn, sweetheart, she said in the voice she used to charm her clients, there's been a misunderstanding. That monthly contribution wasn't rent. It was just your fair share of expenses. We've never thought of you as a tenant. Then I suppose you won't mind if I stop paying it, I replied smoothly, slipping the ticket back into my purse. After all, family doesn't charge. Family, right? Daniel stepped forward, hands raised as though I were a frightened animal he needed to soothe. Mom, please take a breath. This is life-changing. We need to think about taxes, investments, accountants. You can't handle this alone. You need us. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He wasn't the boy Henry and I raised with. Love and hope. He was a man who had learned to calculate, to exploit, to take. Daniel, I said softly, do you know what your father asked of me before he died? Both of them froze. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Daniel swallowed hard. What? He made me promise not to let anyone take advantage of my kindness, especially family. He knew people would try. He told me to be strong enough to say no. Vanessa's smile faltered. Her carefully constructed mask cracked. Evelyn, you're overreacting. This is just a miscommunication. We only want what's best for you. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small notebook. Best for me? Let's look at the numbers, shall we? Their eyes followed my pen as I flipped to a page filled with neat calculations. Over the past year, I've given you $15,600 in so-called household expenses. I've provided more than 1,200 hours of free childcare, cooked over 300 meals, done nearly 800 loads of laundry. And in return, I got a guest room you planned. To move into the basement. Vanessa's face turned red. Daniel opened his mouth, but no words came. That's not family helping family, I said, my voice calm and steady. That's exploitation. The word hit the air like a thunderclap. They both flinched. I stood, tucking the notebook under my arm. And now I have the means to live my life without either of you. $53 million is more than enough to ensure that. Vanessa's voice cracked as she whispered, you wouldn't just leave us. Not after everything we've done. For you, everything you've done for me. I shook my head. No, everything you've done to me. And with that, I walked out of the kitchen, leaving them stunned and pale in their perfect house. By Sunday morning, Vanessa had shifted into full crisis management mode. She greeted me at the breakfast table with a binder in her hands and that too sweet smile plastered across her face. I've been doing some research, she began. Did 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt within 5 years? It's terrifying. Bad investments, greedy family members, total disasters. Daniel entered the room looking haggard, his hair messy from a sleepless night. Mom, she's right. You can't navigate this alone. It's too complicated. Tax law, estate planning, investment strategies. This kind of money is overwhelming. I sipped my coffee slowly, studying them as they presented their well-rehearsed arguments. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about losing control. You've both given this a lot of thought, I said. Because we care about you, Daniel pressed. We don't want to see you ruined. What kind of mistakes do you think I'd make? I asked. Vanessa leaned forward eagerly. For example, buying a house without understanding the tax implications, trusting the wrong people, or letting someone take advantage of your generosity. She trailed off, completely blind to her own hypocrisy. I set my cup down. Vanessa, did you ever research the average cost of an assisted living facility before charging me $1,300 a month for your guest room? Her eyes flickered. What are you implying? I looked it up myself yesterday. A private, Room at the best facilities in Willow Creek costs about $1,800 a month. That includes meals, cleaning, activities, and medical support. For $1,300, you gave me a bedroom, no privacy, and the privilege of doing your housework. So tell me again, who's the one at risk of poor financial decisions? The binder in her hands trembled. Daniel stared at the table, speechless. I stood, gathering my purse. If you'll excuse me, I have an appointment with my lawyer. Vanessa scrambled to block me. You can't leave right now, Evelyn. Reporters are camped outside. They'll mob you. I opened the front door anyway. The moment I stepped onto the porch, cameras and microphones surged toward me like a wave. Mrs. Carter, how does it feel to win $53 million? What are you planning to do with the money? Is it true you've been playing the same numbers for decades? I stood tall, the winter air biting my cheeks. Behind me, I could feel Daniel and Vanessa hovering, hoping I'd retreat. Instead, I faced the cameras with more strength than I'd felt in years. I am grateful for this blessing, I said clearly, and I plan to use it to live independently and make my own choices for the first time in 2 years. The reporters pressed forward. What do you mean by that? I turned slightly, my gaze landing on the doorway where my son and daughter-in-law stood frozen. I mean that sometimes the people you trust most take advantage of your kindness. And sometimes life gives you the resources to finally put an end to it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The microphones inched closer. Are you saying your family took advantage of you? I didn't flinch. I'm saying family should be about love and respect, not business arrangements. And it's never too late to stand up for yourself, no matter your age. The questions exploded after that, but I'd said what I needed to say. I climbed into my car, leaving Daniel and Vanessa behind to face the circus I had unleashed. As I drove away, I saw Vanessa in my rearview mirror, waving her arms frantically at reporters, trying to spin her story. But the truth was already out there, raw, undeniable, and finally mine. By Monday afternoon, the whole town of Willow Creek was buzzing. News vans lined the streets outside Daniel's house. Neighbors whispered at the grocery store, and old friends I hadn't heard from in years flooded my phone with congratulations. But I had bigger things to do than entertain curious calls. I drove to the law office of David Whitman, the attorney Henry and I had trusted for decades. The moment I stepped into his office, he greeted me with a warm smile. Evelyn, congratulations. Henry would be so proud of you. I sank into the familiar leather chair, the same one where Henry and I had sat years ago discussing our will and retirement plans. I just hope I'm doing the right thing, I admitted. David shook his head, speaking the truth to those reporters. That was the right thing. Sometimes honesty is the only way to protect yourself. He opened a thick folder and pulled out a legal pad. Now, let's talk about the winnings. I recommend taking the annuity rather than the lump sum for tax reasons. We'll also set up a trust, maybe even a foundation if you're interested in charitable work. For the next hour, he explained strategies and safeguards in simple terms, never once implying I was too old or too weak to understand. For the first time in years, someone was treating me like a capable adult, not a burden. And then David's expression grew serious. He slid a second folder across the desk. There's something I've been holding on to. A promise I made to Henry before he passed. He asked me to share it with you only if your family ever tried to take advantage of you financially. My heart clenched. What do you mean? David opened the folder, revealing a stack of documents. 6 months before Henry died, he grew suspicious of Daniel and Vanessa. He hired a private investigator to examine their finances. The room tilted slightly as I stared at the papers. He knew they were living far beyond their means, David said gently. Credit card debt, car loans, an underwater mortgage. Henry suspected that after his passing, They try to use you as a financial safety net. He wanted to make sure you were protected. My throat tightened. David continued. Henry also took out an additional insurance policy, $500,000 placed in a trust under your name. It's been sitting untouched for 2 years, waiting for you to need it. Tears blurred my vision. My husband, even in his final months, had been thinking about how to protect me from the very people I trusted most. He knew this day would come. I whispered. David nodded. The question now is what you want to do with this information. I thought about Vanessa's binder, about Daniel's desperate eyes, about the humiliation of being treated like hired help in their home. Then I thought about Henry, the man who had spent his last months fighting not only illness but also a quiet battle to shield me from betrayal. I straightened in my chair. What I want is a family meeting. Tonight, they need to understand exactly how much I know and exactly how badly they've underestimated me. David studied me for a long moment, then smiled with quiet admiration. Henry would be proud of you, Evelyn. Very proud. For the first time in years, I felt proud of myself too, that evening. Daniel and Vanessa arrived at my lawyer's office looking confident, as if they were about to negotiate a deal instead of face a reckoning. Vanessa carried her laptop and a binder stuffed with articles about lottery winners, while Daniel showed up with a bottle of wine and his best peacemaking smile. Mom, Daniel began softly, about what you said to those reporters, we understand you were overwhelmed. This is a lot to process. I wasn't overwhelmed, I interrupted calmly. I was telling the truth. Vanessa snapped open her laptop, her tone professional. Evelyn, we've prepared a comprehensive financial plan. This will ensure your long-term security while allowing us to help manage your winnings responsibly. Before she could launch into her rehearsed pitch, I slid a thick folder across the coffee table. Before we discuss my future, let's talk about yours. Daniel glanced at the first page and instantly lost all color in his face. Vanessa leaned over his shoulder and her lips parted in shock. What is this? She demanded. It's a complete profile of your finances, I said. Evenly compiled by the investigator Henry hired before he died. He worried you'd use me after he was gone. Turns out he was right. Daniel stared at the papers as if they might catch fire. Dad hired someone to spy on us? To protect me, I replied. You owe $47,000 in credit card debt. Your mortgage is underwater by $32,000, and you have 2 car loans totaling $18,000. And Vanessa, I pulled out another document. Your business has been losing money for the past 8 months. Her composure cracked. How dare you invade our privacy? The same way you invaded mine when you went through my purse. When you told me I wasn't capable of handling my own money. Don't talk to me about privacy. Daniel stammered, Mom, everyone has financial struggles. Not everyone charges their widowed mother $1,300 a month to live in a guest room while making her cook and clean like hired help. I placed another sheet on the table. Do you know what I've given you in the past 2 years? Over $15,000 in rent, 1,200 hours of childcare, 800 loads of laundry, and 300 meals. That's not family. Support, that's exploitation. The word landed like a hammer. Neither of them spoke, and Henry knew. I continued, my voice steady. He created a trust, $500,000 in my name. It's been waiting for me, gaining interest. He wanted me to have the strength to walk away the moment you showed your true colors. Vanessa's eyes welled up, but I recognized the tears of someone caught, not someone sorry. Daniel buried his face in his hands. Mom, we never meant. Yes, you did, I said firmly. You meant every demand, every calculation, every plan to push me into the basement like an unwanted tenant. You thought I was too old, too desperate, and too weak to see what you were doing. I stood, my purse over my shoulder, the folder left on the table like evidence at a trial. But you were wrong. I see everything now, and I'm done. Vanessa's voice cracked. Where are you going? To start my life, I answered. I've already put down a deposit at the Meadowbrook Senior Community, a place where I'll have my own space, my own freedom, and none of your debt hanging over me. I paused at the doorway, turning back one last time. And since my income is no longer covering your bills, I suggest you figure out how you'll manage that $47,000 in credit card debt. I hear financial stress can destroy families. Daniel's voice broke as he whispered, Mom, please. But I was already walking away, leaving them drowning in the mess they created. I walked out of that office lighter than I had felt in years. Behind me, Daniel and Vanessa sat in stunned silence, their carefully crafted lives unraveling faster than they could hold it together. Their crisis was no longer mine to solve. By the next morning, news of my lottery win had spread across 3 counties. Reporters camped outside Meadowbrook Senior Community, where I had already secured a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment with a full kitchen, a balcony overlooking the gardens, and neighbors who treated me like a friend, not a burden. For the first time since Henry's passing, I had a place that was truly my own. I spent the afternoon unpacking boxes, photo albums of Henry, framed drawings from Liam and Sophie, my well-worn Bible. Each item felt lighter in my hands, as though it was finally free of the weight of Vanessa's disdain and Daniel's silence. That evening, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, watching the sun dip below the horizon. My phone buzzed nonstop, calls from neighbors, old friends, even relatives who had once forgotten I existed. And yes, Daniel called too, again and again. Each time, his messages grew more desperate. Mom, please, you can't just leave us like this. Mom, we need to talk. We're family. Please, I'm begging you. We need your help. The same son who once told me I was nothing but a burden now begged for my mercy. But I had given them enough, my money, my time, my labor, my love, all taken for granted. This time I wasn't answering as the stars blinked awake in the night sky. I thought of Henry. He had always said justice had its own timing, that sometimes it arrived late but never empty-handed. He had been right. I wasn't just a widow clinging to memories anymore. I was a woman with freedom, with security, and with 53 million reasons to never let anyone treat me as less than I deserved again. For the first time in years, I felt at peace, and I knew one thing with certainty. Evelyn Carter's story was just beginning.